It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know.
Hey, how's it going? It's Friday, November 20th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. Today we'll get some coronavirus updates, we'll get world news of presidential elections, Hurricane Iota, and vaccine updates. Then back to the MBTI segment with One Chun and receiving the message from the Wednesday service. So, how are you guys doing today? It is Friday. Yes, it's finally come. Thank God. And I'm sure all of you are getting ready to enjoy this amazing weekend you guys can do together with the Lord. I hope you guys are looking forward to some fun. What else? Relaxation, realizations, new direction. We get the Sunday service. Just a lot of things we can get kicked off here together on the Morning Star Drive. So keep liking and commenting, and I want to hear from you guys and see how you're doing. Post your song requests, questions, and stories too. Now, remember, this Sunday we'll be meeting a member from America, specifically New York. It is Michael Mont, a new generation of young JS coming into this history. Entertaining interview, really insightful interview too, so be sure to check it out on the Sunday edition. I hope you guys really enjoy the Sunday edition interviews, really just getting to meet each other in an intimate way, see what different members have gone through in their lives before and after coming to this history. And also, not only do we have the Sunday edition, but on Saturday too, we'll be updating the Sermons in the Sky playlist. So I hope that you guys will also be able to enjoy that too. Those of you who don't have that unlisted link, you can go ahead and DM me or PM me, whatever country you're from. DM or PM, whichever of the two. All right. So let's get into the featured artist of the day. Relaxing Friday. What we're going to do is we're going to get a couple songs on this Relaxing Friday. The first song and the featured artist of the day is going to be The Sky from Japan. I believe his name is Maki. Maki? I think so, right? He looks like he's good friends with Kuma-chan. And he started this band called The Sky, and we just discovered them last month. And that song we're going to hear is called Spring Emotion. Then we'll move into the Sumney Boys, old school song Partners in Crime. And then, last but not least, it'll be Bach from Paper Music Associates in Korea. This song is featuring Hannah Kim in DC, and this song is called A Flower. So as usual, guys, make sure, don't just listen, but even while you're listening, pray for these member artists to do well and just to explode so they can spread the gospel through music to the rest of the world.
'cause everything will be alright. Promise me you won't leave me in the dark. Yeah. You asked if I had no regrets. I smile 'cause I only feel blessed to be with you. This love will never go away. I'll stay by you until the end, 'cause we're partners in crime, like we're Bonnie and Clyde. And there's nothing that will get in our way, 'cause you're my only one. My heart will stay the same. Only one. I promise I won't change. Only one. My heart will stay the same. Only one. I promise I won't change. I want this feeling for the rest of my life. When we're together, I feel so alive. No matter what troubles we face, we will never lose our faith in our love. You asked if I had no regrets. No regrets, no. I smile 'cause I only feel blessed to be with you. This love will never go away. I'll stay by you until the end, 'cause we're partners in crime, like we're Bonnie and Clyde. And there's nothing that will get in our way, 'cause you're my only one. My heart will stay the same. Only one. I promise I won't change. Only one. My heart will stay the same. Only one. I promise I won't change.
추운 날 비추인 햇살, 하늘 아래 깨어난 한 송이, 아득했던 밤 하늘 속 바라던 희망도 눈앞에 이뤄진 걸. 작은 하나의 씨앗에서 자란다. 바위와 흙 속에서 지냈던 시간, 많은 시련과 아픈 기억들도 이젠 하나의 손으로 그려졌나.
It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. I know what you feel inside. Oh flower, oh flower. I know you're the most beautiful flower in the world. Oh flower, oh flower. I know you're the most beautiful flower in the world.
아름다운 시간 속에서 살아가는 꽃 한 송이, 하늘 아래 깨어나 웃음 짓네. 그 환한 웃음으로 늘 인사하네. 어떤 바람에도 햇살과 함께하는 모습, 한결같은 마음을 잊지 않는 모습, 진심으로 모든 걸 대하는 하얀 송이의 꽃 따스한 햇살 아래서 함께하는 행복한 순간에 맺혀있던 눈물을 잠시 내려놓고 이제
활짝 핀 꽃처럼 웃는다. 활짝 핀 꽃처럼
아름다운 시간 속에서 살아가는 꽃 한 송이
And that was Bach from the Paper Music Associates in Korea, featuring Hannah Kim, who's in DC right now, and that song was A Flower. Before that, Sumney Boys with Partners in Crime, and of course, the featured artist of the day from Japan, it is The Sky, and that song was Spring Emotion. All right, so on this amazing Friday, just lots to do, lots to talk about. Let's start off first with the coronavirus updates for today. In the world at the moment, there's 56.5 million cases with 1.3 million deaths, and the mortality rate stays steady at 2.4%. When you look at each country, the top 6 countries, you have the US at 11.8 million cases, 256,000 deaths at 2.16% mortality rate. India at 8.9 million cases, 131,000 deaths at 1.47%. Brazil, 5.9 million cases, 167,000 deaths at 2.82%. France comes back into the mix with 2 million cases. They just reached the 2 million case mark at 46,000 deaths at 2.26%. Russia, on the other hand, just on the cusp, 1.9 million cases, 34,000 deaths. Yet, their mortality rate did go up to 1.73%, up 0.01%. Italy, 1.2 million cases, 47,000 deaths at 3.71%. Sweden, one of the only countries not going into full lockdown, down to 3.22%. And Belgium, once again, goes up to 2.75% mortality rate. Let's take a look at daily infection rates by country. Top 6 is US, 173,000 cases for a 1% increase in a day. 173,000, guys. The next closest is India with 45,000, which means this is like 4 times. The US is 4 times the amount of India, and like 4 times more cases than India with a fourth of the population. However, their testing is much, much better. So India's at 45,000 cases in a day. Brazil at 35,000 cases with 1% increase. And Italy at 34,000 cases at a 3% increase. France, 28,000 cases, 1%. And Russia rounds up the top 6 with 20,000 cases in a day with a 1% increase. Southeast Asia, where I'm at right now, Indonesia went up to 4,200 cases in a single day. The Philippines to 1,300 cases. And Malaysia cuts everything in half to 660 cases in a day, which is a very, very good sign. Not sure if the MCO is going to cut off sooner or extend more, but I do think that it's not going to get any better anytime soon until the vaccines come in, all right? And that's kind of what we're going to talk about next in the current news. Usually I don't do current news, but there's just a lot going on in the world right now. And of course, like, there's heavy coverage on the U.S. elections, but I'm not going to do any of it today. Why? Because there's always going to be stuff. And on Monday, I'll cover some more stuff for the U.S. And today we're going to go completely, we're going to go outside the U.S. completely, okay? Well, kind of. So first thing is, I talked about Hurricane Iota yesterday, like 30 tropical storms already in the Atlantic, which is a seasonal record. Let's give you some updates. So already 9 people have died from this Hurricane Iota going into Nicaragua, right? So this Atlanta hurricane is just ripping through areas of Central America, tens of thousands forced to flee their homes, and it's hitting Nicaragua and neighboring countries like Honduras and stuff too. The rainfall is expected to cause mudslides, potentially deadly flash flooding and river flooding too. Winds at 257 kilometers per hour, which for those of you in America is 160 miles per hour, which is crazy. And they've hit areas still recovering from Hurricane Eta. Okay, that was there 2 weeks ago. So that's a major hurricane that hit another major hurricane that hit 2 weeks ago before that. A quick update on the vaccine. I talked about the Moderna one that's 94.5% effective. It's only, it can be stored at minus 20 degrees, right? The Pfizer BioNTech vaccine has just been updated, and their vaccine has now also been proven to 95% effective in preventing coronavirus and has met the safety criteria needed for emergency authorization, the firms have all said. So Pfizer and BioNTech, they say they plan to submit the COVID-19 vaccine to the U.S. regulators for emergency use approval within days. And after, of course, there's no serious safety concerns, and no serious safety concerns were reported. So the final efficacy analysis of the jab showed 95% were protected from the virus within 28 days of the first dose, up from when results of phase 3 trials were shared last week at 90%. So it also proved 94% effective among adults over the age of 65, who are generally more vulnerable too. So that's a really, really good sign. No serious side effects. Only 2% of the 43,000 participants reported had a headache, and 3.7% reporting fatigue, the company said. So that's another good sign too. Also, another thing is in Germany, like we're going to start going to the more political things right now, because one thing I do want to report is very interesting is, like, when you look at how God is making this history or what's happening right now during this time, this is not exclusive to the US. Like, presidential stuff is everywhere. I'm dead serious. So we're going to go over some easy stuff first. Like, for instance, in Germany, there's anti-lockdown protests going on right now. So it's against the government. So police in Germany have fired water cannons and pepper spray at anti-coronavirus restriction protesters. Okay? So officers in Berlin said that thousands of demonstrators refused their request to wear face masks and social distance in line with regulations. So they fired the cannon into the crowd outside the Brandenburg Gate on Wednesday as riot police swept through and carried away some protesters. Fireworks and flares were then thrown in response from the protesters to the policemen, and these people ranged from the far left to the far right, and they also included families and students. So I believe about 200 people have been detained while 9 officers were injured. And this protest happened as German MPs debated a bill that will give the government the legal backing to issue social distancing rules, close shops and other venues, prevent drinking in public, and require masks to be worn in public to slow the spread of COVID-19. So most people in Germany are in support of the measures, but a vocal minority has staged frequent rallies around the country, arguing that the restrictions are unconstitutional. Okay, so let's get into some of these presidential things about the government or the people in charge. Thailand, which is right next door to Malaysia, we can drive there from here. Protests clash with pro-democracy protesters and the loyalists from the old way, right? So in Thailand, violent clash between pro-democracy protesters and royalists in Bangkok. So protesters at the site were pushed back by police water cannons using water that contained tear gas. So anti-government protests in Thailand reached ahead on Tuesday, turning violent outside the country's parliament in Bangkok. Inside, lawmakers are considering proposals to amend the constitution, one of the core demands of the nation's student-led pro-democracy movement. So the movement is calling for the removal of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, a former army ruler, and reforms to curb the powers of the monarchy and to end harassment by authorities. So pro-democracy protesters at the site were pushed back by police water cannons before they clashed with groups who support the royal family. Okay, so that's the first thing that's happening. Next thing that's happening is quite interesting too, is in Uganda. Uganda, right? So there's 3 dead already in Uganda after presidential candidate is arrested. Okay, so what's happening over there in Uganda? There are protests following the arrest of Ugandan presidential candidate, and supporters blocked roads, burned tires in the country's capital of Kampala, and while police fired tear gas and rubber bullets, and at least 3 people have died and 38 have been injured after protests erupted in Uganda following the arrest of an opposition presidential candidate, police in the country have said. So the person's name is Bobby Wine, and that's kind of his stage name because he is a singer, right? He's an artist. His real name is Robert. I can't pronounce it very well, but it's Kyagulanyi. Kyagulanyi, I think. Robert Kyagulanyi. So supporters of this presidential candidate blocked roads and burned tires, right? And this guy, Mr. Wine, he's only 38 years old. He's very, very young, younger than I am. And he was held by riot police at a rally in the eastern town of Lucca and taken to a police station in the nearby city of Jinja, near the northern tip of Lake Victoria. The politician, who's a pop star, who is campaigning to unseat the president Yoweri Museveni, who's 76, who has been in office for 36 years. This is for next year's election. And even Bobby Wine, his stage name, he confirmed his arrest on Twitter, saying police violently broke into his vehicle, took him into custody, and urged supporters to resist tyranny, promising them we shall certainly overcome. Now, there's a spokesman for Mr. Wine's political party, the National Unity Platform, and he said that we have not been allowed to see him and we don't know what's happening. So police spokesman Fred Inanga said the politician was detained for violating COVID-19 guidelines that require presidential candidates to meet or address less than 200 people. Okay, so since declaring his intention to run, the singer has caught the imagination of Ugandans, winning a large following, especially among young people in the East African country, right? So many say they are drawn to him because of his criticism of Mr. Museveni's government mingled in his lyrics. So this Mr. Wine, Bobby Wine, who has been arrested many times in recent years, including after he formally declared his candidacy, has made persistent calls for Mr. Museveni to retire. So there's another one. People against the president, right? And Thailand too is against the royal monarchy. And another one, the last one I'm going to report to is about Peru. In Peru, the president was impeached. So there's protests in Peru right now after the president's impeachment and demonstrations. There's volatility in the Andean nation's politics following Martin Vizcarra's ousting. Okay, so less than a week after he was ousted and deposed as Peru's president in a fast-track impeachment process regarded by a lot of, some of the Peruvians, they say it's a coup. The situation in this nation, right, in Peru, has grown more volatile as demonstrations mount against the country's new leaders. So about a dozen protesters were injured in clashes with the police on Thursday night after thousands of people poured into central Lima in opposition to the new leader, Manuel Merino, who ousted Mr. Vizcarra in a controversial parliamentary vote on Monday night. So Congressman Gino Costa described the gathering as probably the largest in Peru in the last 20 years, and the protests were sparked by Monday's dramatic and unexpected vote to impeach that president. So this is just on Monday, and he stood accused of corruption relating to his time as a regional governor. He denied the charges, but using very vaguely worded clause in the Constitution. So members of Congress voted overwhelmingly to remove him on the grounds of permanent moral incapacity, and hours later, the president quit. So usually, just like in America, his job would go to the vice president, but President Vizcarra, former President Vizcarra had no deputy. So the consequence of previous battles between the executive and the Congress, the post instead passed to the House Speaker, Mr. Merino, a relatively unknown and unremarkable career politician who was sworn in as Peru's unlikely president the next day. So many protesters said that this new president doesn't represent them, and they want Mr. Vizcarra, the former president, reinstated, even if he subsequently is charged with corruption. So there's a lot of controversy as to whether this impeachment was constitutional or not. And the only bloc that backed Mr. Vizcarra in the impeachment vote was the Purple Party. I'm not sure what that is, right? So the country's reacted to it, and we're going to see what happens. And I do believe they already they took that president down, and they elected a third president already within the week since Monday, guys. So it's pretty crazy over there in Peru. But the one thing is very interesting is we have to look at this is, if we focus too much on one country, we're just going to think that this is, only one bad thing that happens. But we have to realize this is something that's happening all over the world. Like, God is working, getting rid of all corruption altogether, right? So we kind of have to look at it from the big scale and see that, wait a second, it's not just America, it's everywhere, right? Because before I even report about things happening in Israel, I report about things happening in China, like with their politicians, and tons of this politics and this corruption, it's being exposed everywhere. Right? What's actually happening? We don't know until everything actually ends, but it's very interesting to see, just not now. Like, it's a major time because Sunseam talks about how president sees how if leaders all switch or change, it means that, there's something big happening, right? Even when he came out in 1978, many leaders changed, like 20 leaders changed, right? I believe 1999 was the same thing. So we have to look at this as a massive spiritual wave that's changing. We're not sure exactly what it is, but we have to realize this is something big, like spiritually wise too. What God is doing is something much, much bigger. And we're looking even right today. I named 3 times, like Thailand, Peru, and there's like against the government in Germany. And I believe one more I reported was Peru, Thailand, and where's the other one? Oh, and Uganda, right? And there's more, guys. So, I'll report more about these things too, but it's something that you have to take a good look at, because what does it mean? It basically means that God is doing this everywhere. It's not just one country. It's just because, it basically, the only reason why we focus on the U.S. news so much is because it's like a major news. It can affect a lot of people, but it's happening everywhere. So I hope that all of us too can be very aware of what God is doing, not just in one country, but in multiple countries. Okay. So that means we're going to move into a time of praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. And I hope that regardless of what happens in your country, regardless of what happens in the world, we have to be those that no matter what, we give glory and honor to the Holy Trinity. So we're going to start with, now we are going ahead, no matter what, right? I'm going to talk about this in the word study from the Wednesday message. We're going ahead. As he said, like when tribulations come, it doesn't mean we stop. We just do it in a different way. So we got to keep pushing ahead. And then everyone in every time period. And the last one of my favorites is, let's sing together. So let's give glory to the Holy Trinity.
Finally, pushing ahead, our new songs move ahead of the world. Those worldly songs are now fading behind us. They're behind, falling even more towards death. God gave the melodies, the Spirit gave the words and lyrics. So I became the singer, and I sing the new songs. The songs of life are the new songs in this new time of life. Heaven's new songs overflow, going ahead of the world. Since you have now become the Trinity's counterparts of love, sing the new songs, sing all the beautiful songs of these times. Sing the new songs, go on and sing along. Everyone sing along for all time. Until the world ends, let's sing these eternal songs, songs of eternal love, now and always. Let's sing the new songs. The songs of life are the new songs in this new time of life. Heaven's new songs overflow, going ahead of the world. Since you have now become the Trinity's counterparts of love, sing the new songs, sing all the beautiful songs of these times. Sing the new songs, go on and sing along. Everyone sing along.
arms with me. Lift up your praise. Everyone, let us sing. Glorify the Trinity. In a flash, we transformed. We become heaven's brides. We are theirs for all time. Sing about memories, stories we shared. Everyone join in one heart. Let's dance and sing. Since we know the Trinity's endless love, joy is ours, life is happy. We'll live with grateful hearts, thankful in spirit, body, and soul. So as we sing, let us rejoice. We'll dance and fall deeper in love. With the Lord we converse joyfully. This is eternal love. This is heaven. Sing about memories, stories we shared. Everyone join in one heart. Let's dance and sing. Since we know the Trinity's endless love, joy is ours, life is happy. We'll live with grateful hearts, thankful in spirit, body, and soul. So as we sing, let us rejoice. We'll dance and fall deeper in love. With the Lord we converse joyfully. This is eternal love. This is heaven. So as we sing, let us rejoice. We'll dance and fall deeper in love. With the Lord we converse joyfully. This is eternal love. This is heaven. This is eternal love. This is heaven.
And that is Let's Sing Together. I hope you guys really enjoyed that song. Before that, Everyone in Every Time Period. And of course, now we are going ahead. All right, so this is going to move us into another section today. We're going to talk about the word study for today, right? So since we put in the current news, we're going to put the MBTI at the very, very end, okay? So let's go into the word study for today and what's happening right now. So the Wednesday message, we just heard that about a few days ago, right? It's already been like over 24 hours. Because we get it on Wednesday night. And there were a couple things in there that were really like intriguing, like, whoa, like if we just changed our thought in a certain way, it would be so different. Here's example. Remember the whole section that was about, like Old Testament, New Testament are different, just as New Testament complete. And we're like, okay, they're different. It's like, and the way people are, their relationship is different because servants are different than children, and children, they bicker over this, and children stay in their domain. And they're just telling the difference between the two. And then, of course, it goes into the complete testament, as in when you're married, what belongs to you belongs to me, right? If you're married, that's, there's no such thing as this is mine, right? The husband has his own things, and the wife has their own things that they can't touch it. No, they own it together, right? Everything is together. And the thing that was really intriguing, like it really made me think. It's like what belongs to God actually belongs to us. You can't think that this is mine and this is God's and this is mine. You can't think like that, especially when you're married. There's no way married people should, in a healthy relationship, should think in this way. So, how should you think about this? And it was so crazy. Like for me, like, whoa, it gave me a really big mind shift, because you have to believe, because we're the brides of God, what belongs to God actually belongs to us. It's not separated at all. We are sharing. And think about this. Remember what Son said is, God owns everything. Everything belongs to God. What can he not give you? But he said something very interesting, because he said, like, if people start to separate things in front of me, I don't want to give them anything, right? So you have to believe this. You have to believe that everything that belongs to God actually belongs to you. And if you believe this, and it belongs to you too. And I was like, wait a second, that's crazy. Because, okay, I'm sorry, but this is what I was thinking about. It's like, wait a second. Then, like, for instance, like, say this YouTube channel doing really well, right? It's not about it being, I have to keep at, God only, it's all in God's hands, right? It's all God's kind of thing, that I need to get to 10 million subscribers. No, reality is it belongs to me. It really does. I have to believe it, that this, whatever God has, all these, the riches, wealth, blessings, all these different things, God owns everything. The difference is we don't believe that it belongs to us. So we're not going to ask for it. Or even if we think or in our minds, we think wrongly that this belongs to God. But then even what something was saying is like, yeah, if people start separating their things from mine, I don't feel good inside, and I don't want to give them anything, right? Because it's the wrong relationship. Because if you think about this, you're like, whoa, why would you think that way, Sunsim? Because think about this. Imagine you're married, right? Imagine that you're married, and all of a sudden your wife or your husband starts separating things. You'd be like, what are you doing? It just gives you a bad feeling inside. Like, what? Are you calculating? Like, this is our marriage. Are you planning to divorce me and take half of what's yours? It doesn't make any sense. Like, we have to realize we have to believe it. If you don't believe, you won't receive. Hey, that rhymes, right? If you don't believe, you won't receive. Which means the question you have to ask is, do you believe that everything that belongs to God belongs to you? Right? Everything. Clothes, technology, like all these are different things. We have to believe that I believe, God, we are husband and wife, and it belongs together, right? And it's a matter of, then once we understand this concept, like this concept of lovers, like not making God feel bad or something feeling bad by saying, oh no, this is mine, this is yours. No, don't touch my things, right? That's really weird for a relationship, and it just makes the counterpart feel really bad. And we have to understand it really belongs to us. I was like, wow, it's a much different type of thinking, right? The way that we think is much different. But we're thinking that it all belongs to God, and we just got to keep asking God until he gives it to us. But it's like, no, the mind has to change. Everything belongs to God, belongs to me, right? So it's not like asking like, oh no, well, I don't know if God will give it to me. It belongs to both of us, right? And that thought, what's in our head, the way we think must be way different. If you don't believe, you won't receive, right? So that's the first thing that was kind of very, very perspective shifting. It already belongs to me, right? Whether it's like this YouTube channel, whether it's about, the jobs that you're working in, all these different things, we have to really, really believe that what belongs to God belongs to us, and then we can receive it, okay? And for me, I was just like, wow, that really makes a lot of sense, right? Because a lot of times, if Sunseem says, like, just in the messages, like, if people start, like, skimping and, like, putting things aside, this belongs to me, and Sunseem, that belongs to you, then it just makes, as lovers, it really, as married people, it feels terrible, right? That you have someone who thinks that way. Right? So that was one of the big ones. It just hit me right at the beginning. Of course, there's a lot of different things that were talked about too, but I got these small details. And that really hit out to me. Like when, remember that point when he brought up there's millions of paths in this world, but all of them are temporary, but there's only one eternal path, right? But the part that was really interesting for me was, but what is our job, right? Because there's millions of paths, but there's only one true eternal path. Everything else is temporary. The part that hit me is what our responsibility in giving the path of life to other people is. And the only thing he said was, know the Bible clearly and in detail, and then teach to others. And then you are teaching the path of life. Right? Clearly and in detail, then teach others. That is the path of life. You are teaching, you're giving these people the path of life. But imagine it's so general. Like, how clear, if something is too general, isn't it kind of weird? It is, right? When it's too general, it's like, well, yeah, kind of, right? When it's general, people don't really get it, right? There's no direction, because the more general it is, the more wide that path is, right? So if someone says, oh, what should I do with my life? Oh, just live it. It's just way too general, right? Or if they say, get a job, it's way, it's like, it's more specific, but how many different jobs are there, right? Like, we have to think about it very, very carefully. Is the more vague it is, the more people don't know what to do, because it's so big. Hey, be a missionary. What do missionaries do? Like, we preach. What? Like, it's too vague. Right? That's why it's like, know the Bible clearly and in detail, and then teach others the path of life. And that's something I'm a very, very huge advocate of people knowing the Bible, memorizing Bible verses, knowing the Bible. What does it mean? Understanding what something says through the word. Like, you've got to know this, because we're the ones that have to teach or live by it, so that other people can live the same way. Right? So that was another one that was like, oof. Like, not only did he just give the truth statement of there's only one eternal path, but he also told us what we can do to give the path of life to other people, and that is to know the Bible clearly and in detail, then teach others, teaching them the path of life, right? So that thing was really, really deep for me too. Another one. Oh, the one about the heart. Remember the one about the heart? Everything done in the heart. When he talks about loving and living with God in the heart is the same as like literally loving with him, like being with him, right? Literally being with God. And it's kind of a hard concept, because like, how do you live and love in your heart, right? But the interesting thing is, the concept that he brought up first is like, think about it. When Jesus came, the rules became super like focused on the heart. Like, what is murder? Murder is in the heart. Adultery is in the heart. It's all in the heart. Which means that if we're able to murder and commit adultery in the heart, because we know it's a spiritual thing, right? Then we have to realize is love is the same thing. If it's that spiritual just to hate a brother, to have murder, to be a murderer, then you have to think about the exact opposite is, then on the flip side, if you love God that much more in your heart and you're living with God in your heart, then that is living and being with him too, because it's a spiritual history. It's all about the heart. Everything is done through your heart, right? Being with God is loving God in your heart and living with God in your heart, right? And that's a completely different way to think, because to explain it properly is very difficult. But we all know that you can murder in the heart, because we feel that hatred in our heart when we don't like our brothers, right? We feel that lust in our heart when we're lusting after someone of the opposite sex or whatever it is, right? And you feel it, and you know it's in there, and it's not like it's not real. You feel it. You know it's real. But just as real as that is when people ask, how am I supposed to be living with God? How can I be with God? On the very opposite spectrum is loving God in your heart, living with God in your heart. And that is the same as being with God. And that for me was very reasonable and logical. Like, oh, that makes sense, right? That really does. Yeah, a bunch of different stuff in the message too that I really, really enjoyed. It was like a normal sized message, right? It was a hearty message because there's a lot of deep things in it. Oh, yeah, what about the part when he says, it's not just about listening and believing, right? You should be living it. That's the real thing, right? So the point that the sentence that was interesting, that was so truthful is, people are so busy in life, so all they do is just go to church and go through the motions. They forget. They don't know. So they don't know deeply. But they only know things as knowledge, because this was the next sentence. I don't know if it's the exact next sentence, but he said, people don't know deeply, they only know it as knowledge, or else they wouldn't take action like that. Like, it's like saying, you're taking action like that? If you knew deeply more than just head knowledge, you wouldn't be acting like that. You know what I mean? And it's true. Like, it's not just about listening and believing, not just going to church, not just going to church because you have to go to church, right? Our life is busy as it is. So then all of a sudden, church just becomes a part of life. Like, yeah, in my life, I go to church. And that's something I do, but you're not gaining anything from it. Just going through the motion, Sunday Christian, whatever it is. Or you're there at church, but your mind is in another place. And he says, yeah, you don't know deeply. You only know things as knowledge. Because if you did realize it deeply, you wouldn't act like that. Right? You wouldn't act like that. So, yeah, there's just really, really good stuff in that message. Like doing greater than the Messiah was a good point, right? You got to believe in what the Messiah says and do what the Messiah says, and then you will do greater things than Messiah. And then the qualifier at the end is like, but you are not, that doesn't mean you're greater than the Messiah just because you did more, right? It doesn't mean anything, right? So, like you go into a big corporation, there's a CEO, and when they were growing in the company, they might have the record for most sales, but there's going to be plenty of other people that have better sales than them. Doesn't mean they're better than the CEO, right? Just because they broke the CEO's record when he was a salesperson makes no sense, right? CEO, no matter what, you can't change that. And even if people break all those records in sales or whatever it is, it doesn't make a difference, right? They will never be greater than the CEO until they become a greater CEO. But of course, when it comes to the spiritual realm, there's only one CEO, which is the Messiah, right? So, and then of course, at one point that I really liked, there's 2 points, last 2 points I'll leave you with, is I really liked it. When tribulations come, we don't stop. We just do things differently. And I think that's something that we have to think about, because when you look at the coronavirus, we went straight before anyone else into this internet online services, right? But then you see other churches that are too rigid, like Shincheonji and other churches are like, no, you have to go to church. You have no choice, right? So these people are like disobeying these orders from the government, whatever it is, and they're still going to church and spreading the virus, right? Because they're so rigid. But he's like, no. Tribulations come. It doesn't mean we stop. We just do things in a different way. And I think that's something really good that we have to think about also. You don't stop. Just do it in a different way, right? And then, of course, that last one, it was just this one short thing. He says, I bear the cross because people didn't do well. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I bear the cross because people didn't do well. And that was like, wow. Okay, that's pretty crazy. I was kind of like, wow, okay. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, and I think that's something that we have to really understand, because he did bring it up. Like, people ask Sunsim what to do, they do it, but they do it by making a lot of mistakes, and then they blame him in the end. He's like, no, I didn't tell you to do it like that with all these mistakes. I told you to do it like properly, right? So I think it's something that we really have to think about also ourselves, really understanding. When he tells us to do it, we got to do it with all of our heart and mind without the mistakes. Or it's not going to come out the way that that he even expected it, right? Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that last word study for this week. It is Friday, which means it's the very end, which means because it's Friday, the song of choice is always Musical Friday. Yes! And the musical I chose today's song from is from a musical called Dear Evan Hansen. I'm not sure if you've seen this musical before, but this song is called Waving Through a Window. Okay, Waving Through a Window. And this is actually the second song in the entire musical. This musical is from 2015. Okay, this is a live recording. It's a Broadway recording, and this song is from the main protagonist, which is Evan Hansen. Okay, and it dives deeper into his struggle with his social anxiety disorder and his longing to be accepted by his peers at high school and in his community. It's actually a really deep and moving song. I've never seen the musical, but I was listening to it, I was like, wow, this is really, really good. And I wanted to share this, guys, with you on this Musical Friday. So this is from Dear Evan Hansen musical, and this song is called Waving Through a Window.
I've learned to slam on the brake before I even turn the key, before I make the mistake, before I lead with the worst of me. I give them no reason to stare, no slipping up if you slip away, so I got nothing to share. No I got nothing to say. Step out of the sun if you keep getting burned. Step out of the sun because you've learned, On the outside, always looking in, will I ever be more than I've always been? Cause I'm tapping on the glass, waving through a window. I try to speak but nobody can hear, so I wait around for an answer to appear while I'm watching people pass. I'm waving through a window. Can anybody see? Is anybody waving back at me? We start with stars in our eyes. We start believing that we belong, but every sun doesn't rise, and no one tells you where you went wrong. Step out of the sun if you keep getting burned. Step out of the sun because you've learned, On the outside, always looking in, will I ever be more than I've always been? Cause I'm tapping on the glass, waving through a window. I try to speak but nobody can hear, so I wait around for an answer to appear while I'm watching people pass, waving through a window. Can anybody see? Is anybody waving? When you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around, do you ever really crash or even make a sound? When you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around, do you ever really crash or even make a sound? When you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around, do you ever really crash or even make a sound? When you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around, do you ever really crash or even make a sound? Did I even make a sound? Did I even make a sound? It's like I never made a sound. Did I ever make a sound? On the outside, always looking in, will I ever be more than I've always been? Cause I'm tapping on the glass, waving through a window. I try to speak but nobody can hear, so I wait around for an answer to appear while I'm watching people pass, waving through a window. Can anybody see? Is anybody waving back at me? Is anybody waving?
And that was Waving Through a Window from the Dear Evan Hansen musical. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. It's a really good song, right? When you look at the lyrics, it's really, really inspiring and moving. So I hope you guys enjoyed that musical Friday, which leads us into the last segment of this day and this week. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the MBTI 16 personalities with One Chun, and I hope that you guys will enjoy this as usual and just have a great time listening to the 16 personalities.
Welcome everyone to another segment of MBTI with One Chun. I hope you've had an amazing week and preparing for the weekend. Last week we did a wrap up. I couldn't wrap up everything, so I wanted to wrap up everything today talking about the dominant function. So today we're going to finish wrapping up the dominant function, what it is and how you know what it is. Alright, so to wrap up, last week we talked about a few things, but one of the last things were how to kind of identify that it is a dominant or even the auxiliary, the second cognitive function that you use the most. And we talked about like how it has a strong influence of your conscious thought patterns and whatnot. But yeah, today I'm gonna give you some specific examples. But starting with this, generally speaking, a function is lower in your stack, your third cognitive function, or your inferior, which is like your demon function, when its sphere of influence is not something you often think or care about. Cool. So it's not something that really you have any interest in. It's not even that you are trying not to care, but it's just that you don't care. Like for me, as an ENFP, sometimes it's just frustrating because I don't care about the details, and and I have to care about it because you need to, right? Or I don't care about keeping a consistent routine. It's not something I really. I mean, there's obviously things that I need to care about, but it's a struggle sometimes for me. And there's also things for you too. They'll be totally different, I guess. But the second point is guidance and criteria for life fulfillment do not ultimately satisfy you. So next point, you can't use it as well or as naturally as people who are dominant. Okay, so these are all points about if it's your third or your inferior function. And next, it is used merely as a defense mechanism to protect the self-image, to protect yourself. And lastly, there is a substantial evidence that it only activates in times of stress and turmoil. So really, theoretically, right, it is possible to use all these 8 cognitive functions that we've all talked about. So we've got NE, NI, SE, SI, FE, FI, TE, TI, right? And of course, you can use them in any given situation. But what we're looking for is an overarching cognitive motivation. So who are we really? What really motivates our behavior? Like, we got to look at ourselves objectively, and not, we have to avoid cherry picking, right? Like just looking at it and then just taking the parts that we like, and that's how people mistype themselves. What is the most important thing about your personality? And not just choosing the things you like, or even just pointing out the things that you don't like. So this is, obviously how people mistype themselves, and we can't just get a superficial view of who we are, or maybe that's what you want. Maybe you do want to be blind to what you really are like, and then you'll never really be able to fix yourself, right? Or to make yourself or develop who you could be. We shouldn't, just aspire to something and avoid who we really are. So we really need to think about it in detail and deeply, objectively, and embrace the weakness as well as the strengths. That can be difficult for each part as well, right? So, it's kind of there's some stereotypes about every cognitive function. So, for example, some people think that if your dominant is SI, then you have good memory. And so, next would be NI. Then you have long-term goals because you think about the future, you're visionary. TI is, people think that, the stereotype is that you're all about analyzing things. FI is about being emotional. SE, when you look at that, you're like, oh, great physical ability. NE is creative. TE is organized, and FE is being sociable, right? But those are just stereotypes. So what's the most important thing about personality typing? And like I said before, it's not about cherry picking. You have to embrace. You have to look at the small examples, and then look at it. And then you need to really unpack unbiasedly everything about yourself and the function. You need at both of it. And it takes a lot of self-awareness and training to see yourself and to listen to what people are saying about who you are, and the actual problems that are happening in your everyday life. Look at it, really look at it, and then analyze it objectively. Take yourself apart from maybe your own maybe logic, or even your own emotions. Like, try to see it from 5 other views. See it from God's view, see it from people's view. Maybe it could be someone that you work for, maybe it's someone that you're working at church with. You have to see it from those different point of views and analyze yourself. And maybe you're not ready for that, but maybe this is the chance that you can learn about who you are. And it's easy to see just the little things, but then you need to get a whole picture of who you are. Don't cherry pick. Don't cherry pick. This is what people do, so you can't. You have to see everything. When some point something out, don't get emotional. Just like, think about it, and then listen, and then learn. Now, let's say, okay, maybe you've identified consistent behavioral patterns, right? Or a trait or a problem about yourself. And now maybe you need to go a little bit deeper and ask yourself why. Why is it that you display it? Or what motivates you to behave in that certain way? And then by learning or like finding out that underlying motivation, you will actually get a lot closer to identifying the correct cognitive function behind that behavior. Okay, so I'll tell you some examples. For example, like, let's say you're really positive and nothing like gets you down. Why? Why is it that you don't get negative? So for SI, it could be you feel secure in life and it grants you confidence. For NI, you have a purpose and you feel hopeful about the future. For SE, you believe that life is full of excitement and fun. For NE, you envision many good possibilities for an interesting life. This is definitely me. And TI, you are confident that you'll figure it out, whatever it is. FI, you know who you are, what you want, and your value. TE, you believe in your ability to get the results you want. And then FE, you know that you have something positive to contribute. So this could be, more or less what it could be, right? Now let's say that you're very lazy and you can't accomplish much. Why? Why can't you? And let's bring it back to the cognitive function. This could be, in a way, connected, right? What is behind your laziness? For SI, you could be, you don't like venturing beyond your comfort zone. For NI, you can't find any meaningful purpose for yourself. For SC, you only want to have fun and to, and just hell with everything else. For NE, you're too easily distracted by time-wasting pursuits. For TI, you don't think it really benefits you to do it. For FI, you just never feel like doing it. TE is you are perfectly fine with the status quo. And FE, you won't get praised or admired for doing it. Okay, so last one. Let's say that you've never really had a close friend. Why? I mean, I don't know the reason why. But let's look at ourselves. Let's try to think about the reasons, right? So what is the reason behind your isolation? So SI, you find it nerve-wracking to meet new people. NI is you're unable to get out of your own head. And SE, you believe people just bring you down. NE, you believe people just hold you back. TI, you don't see the point of friendship. FI, you don't believe anyone would appreciate you. And TE, you believe everyone is only for themselves. And then FE, you want to avoid feeling shamed or even judged. So, personality traits aren't as simple as we thought, right? Nothing is. And as the examples illustrate, different types might express the same trait for very different cognitive reasons. So, the outside may seem similar, but actually underneath there's a deep underlying difference. And I think as long as we're honest with ourselves and what's happening around ourselves, we start to really embrace who we are and learn about ourselves, then that's when we can really start to deeply understand who we are and then work on ourselves. We need to acknowledge this. The first step is always acknowledging it, right? The problem or even the good point. And then that's when you can start to improve it and develop it. And I hope that everyone can do this. If you can't figure yourselves out in one go, it's going to take some time, right? Step by step, you can learn about who you are. So, one at a time, figure out, listen to this again and figure it out. What kind of person you are by learning about these cognitive functions. So, keep in mind everything that I've said. Hope you've enjoyed today's segment of MBTI and enjoy this Sunday and have a great weekend, guys. Thanks.
And thank you so much, Wonchun, for that wonderful segment, ending off the dominant character. So I hope that you guys really enjoyed that once again. And that is the ending of today's podcast. Hope you guys have an amazing weekend, which means what? Now that we're at the end, everyone have a wonderful weekend. Have a great Sunday service. And we'll see you again on Monday on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, I'm on the Morning Star Drive, I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this.